right, let's see if we are live. 80% sure that we are live. We shall see. Okay, we are in fact live. Outstanding.
白岩学園3年 B 組の皆さん、こんにちは。
All right, good afternoon, everybody. I went ahead and threw together just the quickest edit. In all honesty, I wanted to do something a little more artistic with the Andy video, but for some reason I can't explain why. Oh, let me go to the main. For some reason, I really liked the way that the conversation unfolded on its own. So I actually did edit it down just a little bit. So there are a couple of things that I took out, and but for the most part, that's actually the conversation that we had. So I edited very little out, and I'm going to be editing another one. I spoke with Andy a couple days ago, and I'm going to be putting out one more, and I'd like to talk with Andy once or twice more for sure, and possibly to a couple of other people. So this is going to be a little tiny ongoing series about the streets of LA, basically. The things that are going on here are out of control weird. just freaking bizarre and strange. And I mean, everyone knows more or less. I mean, everyone here in this chat kind of knows the score, kind of knows what's going on, but at the same time, once you actually see people, when you interact with people that are having to deal with this stuff, it just becomes more real. And something about it, it's very interesting to listen to a homeless guy talk about how he was harassed because he's white and has white privilege or white privilege or whatever it was that he was accused of. It's like, holy crap, dude. Like, yeah, basically, yeah, just really crazy stuff is going on. So I'm glad everyone liked it. And we'll be putting up more. And of course, by we, I obviously mean myself and my kitty cat, because we're a very small team. Anyway, so hey guys, how's it going? And also, one other thing, I was speaking with a little birdie earlier, and my understanding is that there are people that are getting freshly woke to some of the things that are going on, some of the things that we hear in this little chat box, some of the things that we are aware of. Apparently, it's getting harder and harder to hide what's going on, and there are a lot of people that are coming online, so to speak. So this bodes well for us, and I just I want to go ahead and just say this on the outset. As we all know, I am paused. I'm basically a fucking blue-pilled normie, just some freaking retard that wandered off the streets and was accidentally red-pilled to race realism and the demographic replacements of whites, which is a bummer. But yeah, my background is basically like fucking Nine Inch Nails and like Austin Powers and Monty Python. So basically, I'm just a goddamn normie. But the thing is that there are a lot of people that are coming in that are new, and while and again, I want to be specific in my phrasing here. While there are those who, because we all understand that there are real issues that are genuinely going to have to be thought about in the future, and I really want for peaceful solutions. I want for a happy and safe future for my for my kids and for myself. I want safety. I want security. I want to live a pleasant-ish life. And as we all know, there is some level of possible discord that could come up in the South African sense, which I don't want to have to fucking deal with. Anyway, we all know that that's a possibility. That said, the people that are freshly coming online, the people that are just getting woke now, we're going to have to find some way, and of course by we, obviously, I mean me and my cat. We're going to have to find some way to, like, get them into the fold with, and I know what I'm about to sound like, so please understand. I fully understand what I'm about to say is going to sound fucking retarded. So, okay, now that I have that qualifier out, yeah, like, we're going to have to find some way to get them into the fold without pushing them away. Because different people are going to understand different things in different ways. At the end, yes, I have a cat. Okay, when I said about 2.5 minutes ago that I'm paused, okay, good. Now you know that I'm paused. Outstanding. Yeah, in order to, because some people, they're going to get like the more hard line approach, like that will hit their heads and they'll be like, oh, okay, I get it. I was not one of those people. I'm kind of a soft boy. I got a fucking cat, obviously I'm a soft boy. But the thing is that we're going to have to find ways so that as many people as possible will be able... An army of hobos, good God. As many people as possible are going to be able to understand what's going on. And because I was exposed to this stuff way back in 2014 or so, 2015. And at the time, it was because of... NRXs, the neo-reactionaries that were going through the anarcho-capitalist subreddit on the website Reddit. Yes, I went to Reddit. Okay, again, I'm paused. Okay, moving on. And when I was exposed to all of this stuff, way back in 2014, 2015, yeah, I was still basically like straight ahead normie tier, blue-pilled tier. And that was it. And when I heard people talking about things like demographic replacement, when I heard people talking about this stuff, I was repelled. Really, I was genuinely repelled. And, I got upset, and I went through God, it's almost embarrassing to admit, but it is true. I went through essentially the normal, like, SJW reaction, replete with low-grade histrionics. So it's a little embarrassing, but we all live through these things. Anyway, my point is that if there was a way that these thoughts and ideas could have been impressed on me way back in 2014, 2015, I could have been online quicker. Now, the only way that... that's right. Yeah. Because like a year ago, I talked about this, Why Am I, in chat. I know he remembers this, when we were talking about the red pill experience and how do people get red pilled and whatnot. And the silver bullet that I've found so far is that if you want a red pill in normie, the first thing that you should be thinking about is how to talk about demographic changes. Once you start talking about demographic changes, that gets people thinking really fast, really fast. So do that. Anyway, in order for a person to get to the point of possibly getting red pilled, normally they actually have to suffer some kind of a psychological trauma. So that's out of our hands. We cannot possibly induce psychological trauma. Like for me, the thing that initiated the red pill experience for myself, the first one was like 9/11, basically, and I realized that our government is lying to us. They don't care about us. Blah blah blah. Fill in the blanks. We all know. Okay. And then when it came to like the demographic stuff, the thing that got my attention of all the things, it's really kind of weird, was the Cologne attacks in Germany in New Year's Eve, going from 2015 into 2016. I don't know why, but for whatever reason, that's what got my attention. Now there was a primer to that, and the primer was the NRXs. The NRXers, I had called them names. I'd called them racist. I did. It's true. But the thing is that I knew that they were talking about something that was real. So even though I was calling them racist, I knew that they were referring to something that was real. And of course, I'm talking about the demographic shifts in Europe, because they kept harping on that. They kept banging on about it. And so I had a primer for that. So when I say that if you want to deliver a silver bullet, you should start talking about demographics, what I mean is, even if a person, they just call you the worst names that they can possibly think of, or whatever, they throw a hissy fit and they start yelling and whatever, typing in caps lock if we're on a computer, or if they're in real life, they start autistically screeching, like literally, that's fine. Because if you just start talking about demographics, there is a tendency for that to stick out in the mind. And so they will end up self-red pilling. So that's actually kind of, that's a real thing. Anyway, so coming back to the idea of people that are freshly red pilled, or trying to either induce a red pill or possibly getting them into the fold so that they can get online faster. Anyway, just because it's on my mind, optics kind of are a thing. So, I don't like it any more than anyone else does, but there's a larger program at work right now, and I just want to find as many lifeboats as possible and people that are willing to throw in a hand, willing to pitch in. I want to get their help, and I think that the best way to do this is to find some way to basically mark Colette the entire freaking country somehow. That's crazy talk on my part, but whatever. These are the thoughts that have been crossing my mind for some reason. Anyway, I'm going to get back to the Essential Talmud, because that was actually the entire point of this latest series of streams. The concept here is that this is a cultural exchange. I wish to know about people of different cultures and different. I want to know about their felt experience. I want to know about their value sets. I want to know about their hopes and their dreams. And this is why I am reading the Essential Talmud, because god darn it, I've been told any number of times that diversity is our strength, and I have no choice but to believe the people that have been telling me this on media for the past several years. So here we go. Today I'm going to be reading about the world of mysticism. So this is a completely cold read. I have no idea what it's gonna sound like or what we're gonna be talking about. So there we go. Let me check the chat just for a moment to see what's going on. Oh yeah, Roots and Rizos noticed the 14 viewers as well. Yeah, we're only referring to the viewer count, and that's it. Let's see here. Wait, is it time to leave the commie state? Yeah, I know, dude. Oh my God, Blitz. I get it. I want out. It's a combination of financial and where to go. So I need to have the money to go somewhere, and I need to know where to go. And neither of those two are set for me right now. So yeah, I want out. I have wanted out. But yeah, this is just my situation for the moment. Let's see here. I was on Periscope 5 minutes ago telling normies how it will feel in 5 years. Not good. Yes, you should. And I would say especially bring up demographics. And if you do it, and I've done this many times. I do this in boomer channels. I love doing it in boomer channels, conservative boomer channels especially, where the only thing that I refer to is that Mexicans vote 70% Democrat, and just based on demographics alone, nothing else, only demographics, Texas goes blue in 2024. The screeching and the hand wringing and the crying and the moaning, it just erupts immediately. But the thing is, they know I'm right. And that's why they have that reaction, and they need to be told about this stuff. This needs to be a thing. This needs to be a talking point that everyone just knows. Texas goes blue in 2024 because of demographics, and based on that alone, you'll start to red pill people. In fact, it was after the Cologne attack. I started looking into the demographic shifts in America, and I spent a clean 6 months actively avoiding the topic because I knew what was going to happen. I completely understood that it was going to destroy my worldview, and I was going to have to reform a new one. And I knew that it was going to be super duper unpleasant. So, dude, get out there, talk about that stuff. Demographics. Okay, continuing. Hey, Rich D, how's it going, buddy? All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna start up the chapter now. So here we go. It's already like 11:20. So yeah, we're gonna talk about the world of mysticism. This is a big freaking chapter. So hopefully I can get through it. It's 10 whole pages. That doesn't sound a lot. It doesn't sound like a lot, but I promise you, when you're actually doing a live cold reading, yeah, 10 pages is actually a pretty fair number. So anyway, here we go. The world of mysticism. This again is the Essential Talmud by Aidan Steinsaltz. So cultural exchange, here we go. The Talmud usually mirrors the issues studied in the academies over the centuries, but it undoubtedly contains many halakot and legends that did not originate in public discussions there. Sorry, I keep eating before streams. It's terrible. Sorry about that. Okay, continuing. Some are anecdotes from the lives of great men, others the tales or sermons of sages. But despite these exceptions, the Talmud is basically the public record of deliberations in the academies, the lessons taught by scholars to their disciples, who were regarded as trustworthy because of their high scholastic standards. The fact that the Talmud contains extremely intimate details of the lives of various sages does not alter this basic picture, since the private life of a teacher was also the source of inspirations and study, even if he had not originally intended it to become public knowledge. Together with the public statements uttered before all the academy students, there were various subjects that were discussed in closed sessions. We know, for example, that the discussions of the lineage of certain families was usually conducted in secret. We also find that, that's really funny, family lines, genetic lines, bloodlines being discussed in secret traditionally. Come on, that's pretty freaking funny. Anyway, we know, for example, that the discussions of lineages of certain families were conducted in secret. We also find that lists of ineligible families that had married into the community unlawfully, or families that unjustly disqualified, were not common knowledge, but were handed by rabbi to disciple at certain intervals, approximately every 7 years, lest they be forgotten. Holy cow! So apparently, illegitimate family lines are also a big deal. So legitimate family lines are discussed in secret, and there are records of illegitimate family lines. Holy cow. Wowzers. Wowzers, wowzers. Okay. Again, you know, I tried reading the Talmud straight through some days ago, maybe a week ago. Didn't quite pan out. It was painfully boring. Nothing happened. And I passed over this book. My gosh, do I regret not reading this sooner. Continuing. The Midrash on the Book of Chronicles, which apparently contained an extremely detailed discussion of the genealogy of families, was handed down in a semi-clandestine fashion, and it was claimed that certain people were not worthy of studying it. In fact, this work disappeared from view in the Talmudic era. Holy shit. So, basically the bloodlines is a major, major talking point for these people. Like a major talking point. Okay, continuing. In addition to details of this type, however, there was a whole world of mysticism and mystery that was concealed from the general public and transmitted only to a chosen few. Thus we find it written that, quote, one should not teach the act of creation to two, or the divine chariot to one, unless he is wise and understands by himself. End quote. These esoteric subjects were therefore taught by the rabbi to only one chosen disciple, and in some cases, the teacher confined himself to the outlines of the subject without going into detail. We know very little of this mysticism, and the few details available to us are indicated obliquely in various tractates of the Talmud, which refer to sages and the subjects with which they dealt without providing a satisfactory explanation of the nature of these issues. So, translation, we get to know, you don't get to know, and even amongst ourselves, only some of us know. So the impression that I get is that the only way that you can know about like the deep mysticism, like the real mysteries or whatever, you actually do have to be an armchair scholar. Like you need to be studying this stuff. In academia, they ain't going to tell you shit. So you've got to be well versed of your own accord. That's a hell of a thing. All right. Continuing. In these areas, assumptions and conjectures outweigh facts and certainties, and in some cases, it is impossible to arrive at a conclusive answer. We find books... That's funny. So basically, even if you're an armchair scholar, don't expect yourself to get a final answer. We find books dealing with mysticism that date from ancient times, several of them attributed to Mishnaic and Talmudic sages. It is, however, impossible to ascertain which were indeed written by these authors. The stringent restrictions on esoteric interpretations were relaxed gradually during the Middle Ages, and from the period of the Goenim. Jeez, what a weird freaking... Sorry, when I see new words like this, it's just so strange. Goenim. Onward, we find much clearer statements. By the beginning of the modern era, the Kabbalah, parenthetical, literally tradition, transmittal, and parenthetical, was an important and even central element in Jewish thought. Much of what we can surmise of the esoteric world of the Talmudic sages is based on this literature and the light it casts on the hints contained in the Talmud. Esotericism was apparently first taught in ancient times. The schools established by the prophets, parenthetical, quote, sons of the prophets, end quote, and parenthetical, certainly discussed ways of preparing individuals to receive the gift of prophecy and dealt with the incalculation of specific intellectual methods of comprehending these matters. Such secret groups continued their activities in the Second Temple period, and the various Essene sects were apparently influenced by their secret teachings, as may be ascertained from the sources outside the Talmud, parenthetical, Philo of Alexandria, Josephus, etc. Side note, the Essenes were a sect of all-male monks, basically warrior monks or something like that, and they lived in the hills or some bullcrap. And these guys, they ended up being called zealots. So they were just religious warriors, or religious monks, religious monk warriors, or who knows what. And they were, obviously, because they were all men, there was no such thing as procreation. So these guys, the only way that they could replenish their ranks, as some of them died, was through some form of conversion. So to say that these guys were hardline is an understatement. These guys were extremely hardline. Okay, let's continue though. The Mishnaic and Talmudic sages who engaged in esoteric studies were the heirs of this ancient tradition, which is rooted in the days of the prophets and has survived to the present day. The sources state that the Torah Hasad, parenthetical mysticism and parenthetical, was divided into two parts. Ma'aseh, Bereshit, parenthetical act of creation, and parenthetical, and Ma'aseh Merkava, parenthetical divine chariot, and parenthetical. The former was more theoretical and dealt with the creation of the world and the first divine revelations. Ma'aseh Merkava, based on the prophet Ezekiel's description of the divine chariot, is a study of the prevailing relationship between God and the world, and apparently contained the seeds of what later came to be known as Kabbalah Ma'asit, practical Kabbalah. My gosh, I mean, there's so much to go over here. I feel like I could just do like an entire deep dive on like individual sentences, and all this is just a brief overview. Good God, like an entire freaking world. All right, continuing. As we have noted, all these matters are shrouded in mystery. We know only that most of the great Jewish scholars engaged in esoteric studies, some extremely intensively and others as an essential part of religious study in general. There were also scholars who did not regard themselves as worthy of such knowledge, and they therefore only dabbled in the subject. Among the themes known to have been contained in esoteric teaching were the names of God. From the Mishnaic period onward, the explicit name of God was never uttered except in the temple, and we learn from the Septuagint? What? I don't. Yeah, seventh. That's all I know. Seventh something. That this was an ancient tradition. Side note, the true name of God being unknown, that's actually a very real thing. The Messianic age cannot come about until the word of God is uttered a certain number of times in temple or something, and because they no longer have the true name of God on a purely technical level, the Messianic age cannot come about, and indeed Israel should not exist. The nation state of Israel should actually not exist because they don't know the true name of God. So there is actually a lot of dissent within certain communities about how authentic and non-blasphemous Israel is. But of course, I'm referring to other people. I am not referring to the thoughts and views of anyone in the chat or Ekelux live streams. I love Israel, and diversity is our greatest strength. Continuing. Where were we? Okay. Known as the explicit name, which is known only to a select few, a certain sage who had served as a temple priest in his youth reported that the name was uttered during the priestly blessing, but was intentionally drowned out by the singing of the Levites, so that even the young priests never heard it. Also very interesting. So basically, no one is supposed to know, not even the followers and the adherents. Wowzers. Okay, continuing. There is therefore no known tradition, parenthetical, except in the Kabbalah, and parenthetical, on ways of uttering the divine name, parenthetical. There were apparently a number of ways expounded upon in later Kabbalistic works, and modern attempts at transcription are not even viable guesses, end parenthetical. Furthermore, we know that the four-letter name, despite its sanctity, was not the explicit name, and that there was a 12-letter name, a 42-letter name, and even one with 72 letters. These are referred to several times in the Talmud, but without explanation. And even the classical Talmudic commentators did not always understand the reference. The high priest apparently uttered the explicit name on Yom Kippur, but because of its length and complexity, it was almost impossible to grasp it. The name aroused great awe, as the Mishnah related, quote, "When the priests and the people heard the great and terrible name uttered by the high priest, they would kneel and bow down and say, 'Blessed be the name of his honored kingdom forever and ever.'" End quote. The Talmud explains that only those few disciples who were outstanding for their spiritual qualities and profound moral standards were taught the name by their rabbis. The mystic and esoteric world was kept hidden for several reasons. One basic reason was that it was considered that matters pertaining to the greatness of God should be left to those worthy of studying them. This, by the way, is identical in form to cast not pearls before swine. That is to say, swines are not capable of appreciating pearls, so do not cast your pearls before swine. So basically they're saying that their own people within their own fold were swine. It's funny. Continuing. But it was also feared that unworthy use might be made of the powers a man acquired from knowing the names and the secret accord to which the world was constituted. The sages regarded knowledge of, quote, "the letters according to which heaven and earth were created," end quote, as an instrument lending mortals the power to engage in acts of creation. Again, I say, holy cow, this is an amazing thing to be reading right now. They even said, quote, "if the righteous so chose, they could create a world," end quote. And we sometimes read of sages who studied a, quote, "book of creation," end quote, and created various objects. Wow. So now we're talking about creating objects. I wonder if they're referring to engineering space-time. That is to say, making things where there were no things, creating matter where there was no matter, matter itself winking into existence. I know that I'm going out on a limb with that last bit, but kind of amusing to contemplate. Continuing. It is related that one of the scholars created a man through reciting names, and this is the first reference to the legend of the golem, which appears in medieval esoteric literature. This power to create and even destroy, wielded by the Baal Shem, parenthetical, possessor of the name, and parenthetical, was possessor of the name? Shem. Shem means name. Baal, that's B-A-A-L, is translated as possessor. That's interesting. I should look into the etymology of the word Baal, or Baal, or whatever. All right, continuing. I'll reread that. This power to create and even destroy, wielded by the Baal Shem, was undoubtedly a powerful argument for concealing such matters from the knowledge of people who might exploit such powers for evil purposes. Dun, dun, dun. There was another consideration. Study of esoteric teachings was not merely theoretical. It seems to have been accompanied by profound mystical experiences which were apparently dangerous for those imperfectly prepared. These experiences were known, we believe, as Pardes, parenthetical, entering the orchard, end parenthetical, and there is a well-known story in the Talmud about 4 sages who entered this orchard: Ar Akiva, Simon ben Zoma, Simon ben Azai, and Elisha ben Abuya. They were guided by the wisest and most experienced among them, Ar Akiva. It is related that he warned them of certain dangers awaiting them in words that could have no meaning for those who had not traveled in those spheres. Despite his guidance, however, the group was unable to withstand the dangers. Ben Azai died. Ben Zoma lost his reason, i.e. went insane, and Ben Abuya, quote, uprooted plants, end quote, that is, arrived at heretical views, apparently under Gnostic influence. Only our Akiva, quote, went in a piece and came out in a piece, end quote. This story is the most detailed, but not the sole description extant, and its intention was to emphasize the dangers awaiting those who entered into this domain. So, having a mystical experience, the closest approximation that I can think of off the top of my head would be a psychedelic experience or something. And apparently it can really fuck with you, like hardcore. So obviously one guy basically went crazy. Another guy moved toward heretical views. And the last guy died. Who knows why? It could have been anything. People that have stressful experiences can have heart attacks or embolisms or whatever. So weird shit happens, and I get it. All right, continuing. The teaching of the Ma'aseh Bereshit was therefore never carried out in public and was always confined to one disciple. Thus, a student whose qualifications were close. This sounds like something out of Ghostbusters. I mean, if you think about like all the weird shit that was going on in the movie Ghostbusters, this actually totally sounds like it could have been written by Dan Aykroyd. Anyway, continuing. Thus, a student whose qualifications were closely examined did not receive detailed instructions, but was merely taught outlines of the subject. In this way, if he did not display aptitude and did not himself arrive at a mystical experience, he would not be harmed by the knowledge imparted to him. Oh, so tests, basically. And the test is, if you can pass this, if you can be exposed to this information and somehow of your own accord generate a mystical experience, then you may pass. If, on the other hand, you are an NPC exposed to this information and simply eat a fucking sandwich after the fact with no real thoughts in your mind about the incredible thing that you were just told about, then you're just a goddamn NPC and you're not worthy and you will never pass any further. All right, that's interesting. All right, merely taught elements of the subject. In this way, if he did not display aptitude and did not himself arrive at a mystical experience, he would not be harmed by the knowledge imparted to him. We find, for example, that R. Elazar ben Arak lectured on this subject to his teacher, Rabban Yohanan ben Zakkai, who was amazed at the understanding he displayed. Other disciples told Yohanan of their discoveries in this sphere, and he replied, quote, "These words were said to Moses on Sinai," end quote. But, as noted, only the bare facts of the stories were known, and no explanation beyond vague hints is conveyed on their content. It should not be assumed, however, that there were two separate areas of, quote, revealed, end quote, and, quote, hidden, end quote, material. To a certain extent, these were thought of as components of the all-embracing Torah. A well-rounded disciple who absorbed his rabbi's teachings also learned esoteric wisdom. It was related of Rabban Yohanan ben Zakkai that he left out nothing and learned from his teachers both, quote, great and small things, end quote. The explanation was, quote, great things, ma'aseh merkava, small things, the problems which Abaye and Rav discussed, end quote. Yeah, okay, all right, so just great and small things. But both great and small were contained within the Torah. What is more, the Talmudic outlook sees all worlds, that of material nature and the higher metaphysical spheres, as a single unit with no barriers between its pairs. as above, so below, and the two get to cross in between each other. Continuing, Talmudic discussion of everyday affairs often takes flight into metaphysical realms. An example of this is the story told by R. Yossi, disciple of R. Akiva. One day he went. Actually, you know what? We're at 11:45. I've only got like the rest of this page and the next page, so I think what I'd like to do is take a quick little break to rest my voice so that I can continue on. We're at 2:52. Alright, good enough. Found a bookmark. So I'm going to just take the quickest little break. I'm going to do a little dance and I'm going to drink a little water. And in the meantime, I'm going to play a track. Let's see, what am I going to play? What is this? Properties. What is this? No, I'm not going to play that. I played that last time. What's this? Properties. You know what? I'll go with this one. This is a nice track. It just happens to be loaded, so I played it like a couple days ago, and I kind of feel bad about playing it again so soon, but I'm going to go with it. This is a vaped version of a Tears for Fears song off of their album Elemental, their 1993 album Elemental, and the title of the song is, in fact, Elemental. It's a great track off of a pretty decent album overall. I actually did like this album. So yeah, this particular track has a shitload of nostalgia embedded within it because I actually owned this and listened to it in high school. Yes, in the mid-90s. My God, I'm old. And with that, I'm going to have some water. Oh man, I got caught up in the music. Sorry about that. That happens to me every so often. My bad. Um, yeah, it's a great track. What are you gonna do? Great track plays. What are you gonna? You gonna listen to it. You gonna listen to it. And you're like, oh wow, it's awesome. Okay, continuing. Um, and yeah, actually, screen name. Yeah, this reading of the Talmud. Not gonna lie, it's a hell of a lot of fun to listen to. To read on my own. I can only imagine that it's fun to listen to. And this is 100% inspired by Bill Cooper. Bill fucking Cooper. Love that guy. The Hour of the Time. And great big fan of Bill Cooper. And yeah, he would just go through and read all kinds of weird stuff. So, like my introduction to a lot of this high weirdness, 100% because of Bill Cooper. So, just throwing it out there. This is but a nod to Bill Cooper. Yeah, because what would he do? He would read stuff, and then what I'm doing is modeled 100% after Bill Cooper, because he would just read some weird bullshit or whatever. He would offer some commentary or whatever, and then he would take a break to do something, God knows what, stretch his legs, crack his knuckles, who knows, and then he would play some music. So yeah, basically I'm aping Bill Cooper to 16 people here, so that's funny. Okay, so we were about to read about a story, so let's go ahead and read this here story. I have to backtrack a little bit so that I can get to the sentence, because there's a lead-up sentence. Two lead-up sentences. Yeah, I'm gonna have to backtrack just a hair. So here we go. We're leading up now. What is more, the Talmudic outlook sees all worlds, that of material nature and the higher metaphysical spheres, as a single unit with no barriers between its parts. Talmudic discussion of everyday affairs often takes flight into metaphysical realms. An example of this is the story told by R. Yossi, disciple of R. Akiva. One day he went into the ruins of Jerusalem to pray, and when he came out he saw Elijah the prophet awaiting him at the entrance. Elijah asked him whether he had heard a voice in the ruins, and Yossi answered, quote, I heard a divine voice murmuring like a dove and saying, Woe is me, for I have destroyed my house and burned my palace. End quote. Elijah replied, Not only now does it speak thus, God himself mourns the destruction of the temple 3 times daily. End quote. Without pause, R. Yossi went on to tell his disciples what halakhic conclusions he had drawn from this conversation with Elijah. The divine voice and Elijah's revelations are an integral part of a prosaic story of a sage who chose to pray in a secluded spot. Not are the two worlds remote from one another. The deserving man lives in both without strain. Tales of how Elijah appeared to sages, discussed halakha or esoteric matters with them, are very common in the Talmud, and often arise out of various halakhic associations, whether profound or trivial. So hearing people, basically, they get to hear voices. I'm tempted to say lucky bastards because I always want to have one of those deep mystical experiences unprompted by anything. But of course, that's a two-edged sword. You never know what critters you could be invoking. So, don't be careful of what you ask for. If you ask to speak to something, you might speak to something, and that something might not be the thing that you actually wanted to speak to. So just worth mentioning. Continuing. This close connection between prosaic and esoteric matters is one of the astounding characteristics of Jewish esoteric literature in general. The Jewish mystic is not detached from the halakha and practical questions. On the contrary, the halakhic expert is often also a mystic, and the Kabbalist studies legal and mystic matters with the same degree of enthusiasm. In fact, esoteric literature, in a way, is interpretation and theological substantiation of the everyday details of halakha. This outlook does not differentiate between the rational world and the world of mysticism, both being seen as part of a whole. Those same letters, this is all straight ahead. If you read J.D. Salinger, Salinger was basically on this tack the entire time. It's kind of funny. I went through a big Salinger phase. That's its own thing. I actually do like Salinger. He can be a bit much, I completely admit. But he had some funny prose. He had some really funny prose, and one of his big things was a borderline religious view of world. And I actually do believe that this was largely informed by his experiences in World War II. He ended up just becoming a fucking hermit, and living out the rest of his days in some weird town in God knows where, talking only to the townsfolk, and that was it. He just stopped everything. It was really weird. Anyhow, but this whole thing of living life as a combination of religious and normal, everyday experiences are both religious and average at the same time. I get that. I actually do get that. And in some way, I kind of agree. Obviously, my own theological base would be somewhat different, but that's just me. Continuing, this close connection between prosaic and esoteric matters is one of the outstanding characteristics of Jewish esoteric literature in general. Good heavens, I went up a paragraph, my bad. But I'll restart this one paragraph. This outlook does not differentiate between the rational world and the world of mysticism, both being seen as a part of a whole. Those same letters from which heaven and earth were created, which contain infinite creative and destructive powers, are also the letters which make up Torah itself and record and relate all the great and small issues with which Talmudic halakha concerns itself. Man's status within this world is often highlighted, and he is regarded as the perpetuator of the creative process. Esoteric literature implies that the concept that man was created in God's image is a basic structure, and that man is able to create independently. One of the most imaginative stories in Talmudic literature reflects many of the elemental problems in this area. It is the description of the controversy between the great Eliezer and most of his disciples, headed by R. Joshua, on questions of ritual purity and pollution. The dispute was aroused by a seemingly marginal question, namely whether a pottery utensil could be defined as a broken vessel, one that is unpollutable. That is kind of an interesting question. In theory, anyway. Tools, for some reason, were not regarded as pollutable, or I think it was tools, but there were categories of objects that could not be polluted. Incomplete objects could not be polluted, and I'm pretty sure that utensils could not be polluted either, pretty sure. So by defining something as being inherently unpollutable, a different person saying, that that it falls under a separate definition in which it could be pollutable. That's a semi-interesting topic. This, I think, is why there's so much hay made about redefinition of concepts. Continuing. When the sages refused to accept R. Eleazar's view, he called on the forces of nature to prove his theory correct, crying, quote, "Let the carob tree be uprooted from its place. Let the water change the direction of its flow." End quote. To this, R. Joshua replied, quote, "You cannot cite evidence from the carob." End quote. Then R. Eleazar appealed to heaven to prove that his ruling should be accepted, and a divine voice was heard saying, quote, "What do you want, my son Eleazar, whose rulings are universally accepted?" End quote. Still, R. Joshua was firm in his opinion, saying, quote, "Torah is no longer in heaven. God has given it to men, and it is they who will decide this matter." End quote. Wow. R. Joshua was having a discourse and disagreement with possibly God, possibly an angel. Basically, the angel was saying, we think that Eleazar is correct, and R. Joshua took the upstart position, saying, "Fuck off, angel. You're not wanted here. Our rules are more important than angelic utterances and support." That's funny. All right, continuing. Most of the scholars then ruled against R. Eleazar. So apparently everyone took the word, everyone decided on R. Joshua. When R. Joshua, okay, so Eleazar was basically saying that God gets to. Let me just. I want to make absolutely sure that I'm understanding this. He was saying, let God make the decision, and there was a voice. Let's see here. He called blah 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 thing, saying the thing to this. Eleazar, heaven to prove. Yeah, a divine voice was heard. So a divine voice of some kind basically said, "What do you want, Eleazar, whose rulings are universally accepted?" That's an endorsement. That's an implicit endorsement. So basically, an angel endorsed Eleazar, and the rest of the Pharisees, I guess, they were so hung up on rules that they were like, no divine words. We have rules. We have a rule book. We will adhere to the letter of the law, not the spirit. That's a hell of a thing. That is seriously one hell of a thing. Always remember that. Adherence to rules. Adherence to rules. All right, continuing. Most of the scholars then ruled against R. Eleazar. This story, which illustrates the Talmudic view that man is a creator, was only concluded several generations later, when it was reported that one of the sages asked Elijah the prophet what God said on that occasion, and Elijah replied, "God smiled and said, 'My sons have prevailed over me. Yes, my sons have prevailed.'" Fucking hell. Yes, fringe nationalism. This was, and that's, by the way, the end of the chapter. So there we go. Yeah, that's, good God. Good heavens, rather. Yeah, basically the Talmud is so powerful that you can cite the Talmud over a divine voice. If someone invokes a divine voice, the Talmud still wins. The Torah still wins. That's a hell of a thing. That is one hell of a thing. Gosh. I don't even know what to say to that. All right, so anyway, it's 12:06 now, and we are now at the tail end of the stream. Let me see if there's one more track that I might want to play, maybe. I'm not sure. What are we looking at here? Properties. What is that? No, I don't want to play that. What's this? I'm not sure what this is. Do I want to play this? What is this? You know what? I am going to play this. This is a great track. I miss it. I'm going to play it. Somebody asked about it a couple days ago, so I'm going to play it. I want something calming and fun and pleasant. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to listen to something that's calming and pleasant and fun after all this talk about high weirdness. So here we go. AFK BRB. This is Life in the 90s.
Hiya, Toonsters. Welcome to the 90s. You know, one of the hazards of being a 90s trendsetter is that sooner or later, everyone is gonna copy your style. Chill, man. Chill, man. Chill, man. Pathetic, isn't it? Mindless clones following the crowd because they think it's hip and trendy. I don't do things just because everyone thinks it's cool. I'm an individual.
Okie dokie. That was Life in the 90s, a brilliant track that I just happen to love tremendously. And of course, the skateboarding, great big fan. Great big fan. So, anyway, I guess that's basically going to be it for the stream. I kind of want to keep it short-ish because I kind of have to get good sleep. At least I'd like to try to get good sleep. So that's I'm gonna prioritize sleep. So there you go. Anyhow, thank you everybody for popping by. This has been a reading of it's not actually the Talmud. It's a toe dipping into the Talmud. This is just a primer on the Talmud. and I'm going to try to find, because the idea was that I've heard people refer to the Talmud, and it's good to know things, but there's a lot of misinformation, and I think it's much better to do what you can to go directly to the source. So I'm willing to believe that there is some outlandish and very bizarre stuff that's really real. I'm absolutely willing to believe that. But I want to see it within its context so that I can verify for myself. I'm an empiricist fundamentally. So the way that I see it is I just want to see it for myself. And if I'm going to go through this, if I'm going to be reading these books, if I'm going to be learning all of these things, why not share? So that's basically the idea. So earlier, Fringe Nationalism, I think, asked, is this the Talmud? So, like, yes-ish. This is just a description, So that's the whole deal there. I just want to share. This is a cultural exchange. We're learning about new cultures, new belief sets, new religious values. That's all this is. Always, what is it? Diversity macht frei. That's just the way that it is. Rich D says, these are great streams. Oh, thank you. My apologies for FedEx posting. I'll watch my P's and Q's. Thank you. I appreciate it. I personally don't actually, like, I overall don't care about what people discuss or whatever. The only rules that I've got are, like, on a personal level, the only real rule that I've got is I don't like it when people engage in personal attacks. But because now we have to be thinking about algorithms, the only other two rules, I think I got 4 rules total. I forgot what they were. But the only other 2 major rules are no Fed posting and no usage of words that will trigger algorithms or be used as excuses to take down my channel earlier than I think it will be taken. Because I think that any channel that is not actively progressive or socialist or whatever is going to get taken down sooner or later. So I do think that this channel is I think there's a timeline on this. I really do. I think there is. But I'm going to stream for as long as possible, and I just want to make it as hard as possible for the hate squad to shut me down. I just don't want to make it easy for them. So that's the only reason that I ever think about things in the chat. So that's basically it. So sorry, I wish that weren't the case. It is the case. I don't like it. It bums me out. I'm sorry about that, but that's just the way that it's got to be. So, yeah. At any rate, and I'm only saying that for like the 2 people that are newish and might not know. That's basically it. Okay. So at any rate, because I know Rich D. I know you get it. And I appreciate it very much. At any rate, so yeah, I guess I'm calling stream tomorrow. We're gonna have another installment of our essential Talmud reading, Talmud Talks by Eke Lux, and I'm not sure exactly what we'll go into because I already went into ritual purity and impurity. Maybe I'll do Sabbath. Yeah, why not? Sabbath. Sounds fun. We'll do that. Sabbath. Done. Even though today was a Sabbath, but whatever. It's not that big of a deal. At any rate. So, yeah, I'm going to call a stream. Here we go. I'm going to load everything up. I'm not going to play an album. I'm just going to go outro and then end stream. So it's going to be the traditional ending. So, in the spirit of the traditional ending, though I did no K-streaming today, I would like to say that if you are going to exercise your God-given right to keep and bear arms as enshrined in the Second Amendment, though not protected, sadly, and I know this from personal experience living in California, I think it's important that you ought to have safety and handling firmly in mind. I genuinely do think that you want to treat your firearm with the respect and care that it deserves. It is, after all, a self-defense tool, and one of the more impressive ones. So, with that in mind, rule number 1, always treat every firearm like it is loaded. Rule number 2, never cover or sweep anything that you are not willing to destroy. Rule number 3, your finger stays off of the trigger until your sights are on target. And the 4th and final rule is be aware of your target and what's beyond it. Safety first. And also, brief side note, I think that this is something worth saying, so let me just throw it out there. Remember to floss. Remember to floss. Whatever you do, remember to floss, because all of those wonderful little bacteria and critters and whatever they get in there, you want them out. So, floss. So there you go, guys. That's going to do it for old Eke Lux. I'll see everyone tomorrow, and yeah, that's about it. All right, guys. Cheers.